You're listening to episode 254 of Mitolife Radio. I'm interviewing Angela Stinson, also known as the Parasite Mama, formerly known, as she talks about, as the anti-parasitic mama, because her beliefs changed as she was working with clients and seeing how overboard people go with cleansing. One of the reasons I was really excited to do this show on parasites is because of my history with raw veganism. That was where I started my health journey and did quite a lot of cleansing and anti-parasitic herbs and all sorts of different cleansing protocols. And I don't regret it because I didn't have super negative reactions, and I did definitely reach higher levels of mental clarity and kind of broke the mental fog that I was in for the first 2 decades of my life. But as Angela talks about in this show, you can definitely overdo it. And she did with the anti-parasite protocols to where her hair actually started falling out. So in this show, she shares her philosophy of going gently and not being too aggressive. And she educates her clients that she works with on nervous system regulation, making sure that the drainage pathways are open, and really asking the question, are you even ready? Is your body prepared to do a parasite cleanse? So the overarching mantra with Angela's work is what allowed the parasites to become overgrown in the first place. And that's what she works on with her clients, looking at trauma, people that were jabbed, mold exposure, chemical exposure, heavy metals, history of processed foods, root canals, breast implants, unaddressed cavities. She says that she goes down those avenues first before going to the parasite cleanse, which can cause a lot of turbulence and really make people sick. That said, we get into all of the different protocols and herbs and substances that you can take. We talk about the heavy hitters like febendazole and ivermectin. She talks about why she uses bioenergetic testing in combination with hair tissue mineral analysis. I ask her, do you have to travel to get parasites? We talk about Toxoplasma gondii, the cat parasite, so-called. Talk about coffee enemas, moving the lymph, her favorite ways to move the lymphatic system. Talk about iron overload and iron deficiency. Talk about Lyme, turpentine, colon hydrotherapy, liver and gallbladder flushes, why she likes homeopathy and castor oil packs, why she likes binders, how to address biofilms. She shares the biggest worm that she ever had come out of her. I ask her if the rope worm is real. It's like a raw vegan legend that I've been aware of for 14 years. She talks about why she's not a fan of borax. I ask her thoughts on Royal Rife frequency machines. I ask her thoughts on starving them out with fasting. And then we get into listener questions, including, does cleansing during the full moon actually do anything? Are we doomed to always have parasites if we eat raw fish, sushi? Is it true that parasites can impact our thoughts? How do we know if we are being affected? Thoughts on garlic enemas, thoughts on Lyme and co-infections, if we could heal from that without antimicrobials. Her thoughts on Hulda Clark and the Zapper. Listener asks about black walnut, clove, and wormwood. Should you hit those hard or go slow and steady? For how long? How long is an effective parasite cleanse? She talks about liver flukes. Someone asks how to pass them, symptoms, how to kill parasites on food. Does she like ozonating her vegetables? Are parasites always dead when they come out in the stool? What foods naturally kill parasites? And there's probably 30 more questions that I ask her from listeners. This is one of the most popular topics. And in the past with shows, I've lumped it in with mold illness and Lyme, but I really liked having an entire show focused entirely on parasites because I always like seeing people's perspective and point of view on it, especially someone like Angela, who's a healthcare practitioner that works with clients with this issue and has for years and went through her whole process of trial and error and learning what works. So enjoy the show. Here is Angela Stinson. All right, we're here with Angela Stinson. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about parasites. It's something that I've been into because I started my health journey with raw veganism, and there's a strong link with that movement and parasite detox. So I went pretty deep down that rabbit hole and did so many different experiments with turpentine and all sorts of crazy stuff. Had tons of colon cleanses, and I would just love to get your take on all that stuff. So,
yeah, that was definitely me too. I can delve into a little bit about my background if you want, about how I came, into the whole parasite thing. But that was me too. I was super sick my whole life, lots of weird health issues. And the older I got, the more labels I got from the doctors. So we think you have rheumatoid arthritis. We think you have fibromyalgia. We think you have IBS, like all these things. And eventually it got to the point where they thought I had aggressive lupus, that it had gone to my blood and brain. They told me I wouldn't live to see my 40th birthday. So at 36 years old, here I was, over 300 pounds. I was on 32 daily medications, and I could barely walk. I could barely do anything. I had to use a cane and a motorized scooter to get around. So for me, when I almost died of over 15 pulmonary embolisms at 36, I started researching, what is going on? Can I heal myself? And of course, I got involved in a lot of crazy Facebook groups and read anything I could get my hands on. And when I came across parasites, I was like, whoa, maybe this is what's going on with me. And same thing. I went super extreme. My family thought I was crazy. My doctor thought I was crazy. It was like, wean me off these meds. If I'm going to die, I'm going to go out natural. And I started talking to my doctor about parasites. And of course, I used myself as a guinea pig too. I tried everything you can think of. And for me, I went so extreme, really way more extreme than my body was ready for. And I made my symptoms really a lot worse in a lot of ways. I ended up losing all my hair and had to shave my head because I didn't know about prepping my body. I didn't know about, making sure my drainage pathways are opened, or using binders, or making sure my nervous system was ready for all that in the first place. So I'm a huge fan now of doing things much more gently and not living in fear of parasites. And I think in a lot of these parasite forums, especially the raw vegan movement, which I did too, not anymore. I've been saved, but it does get very extreme, where they're starve it out, be aggressive. If you feel horrible, keep pushing through, advice that I would never, ever give anymore. Even my name, when I started doing this journey, I wasn't a practitioner yet. I was just a girl that was like, here's what I'm doing. And pretty soon people started saying, oh, you talk so much about parasites. You're like the parasite queen. You're the parasite lady. And at first I did call myself anti-parasitic mama. But after working with hundreds and hundreds of clients at this point and researching and just what I've learned in my own healing journey, I am now parasite mama. I am not anti-parasitic mama anymore because we need parasites. So there's a lot of fear around parasites, especially now with all these weird TikTok trends, do this, do that. And it really is unfortunate because I see a lot of people following in my footsteps what I did too, and just being aggressive and living in fear. And that's definitely not what I'm about anymore.
Well, I'm glad you said we need parasites, because that's something that I want to definitely delve into, because it seems like there's like divided camps, like people that say they kill them all, and then people that, and then the opposite, you have like the raw autogenous founder planets, raw primal people, which I've known a lot of them over the years, and they're like, consume parasite eggs, and they're a detox tool, and they help us get healthier. And my perspective on it, and maybe it'll change after the show, I don't know, it's like a balance. If it's somewhere in between those, like, probably don't want to kill them all, but you probably want to keep them down to a certain level where they're not like overloaded.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really where I am as well. In the beginning of my own journey, and again, a lot of things that you see out there are like kill, 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 cleanse, cleanse, cleanse all the time. And what I've learned is that there's got to be a balance. And there are some people that go really extreme. If some people, including myself, I like to always be learning. And I always say learn loosely, because what you think you know now may change in a year. Your opinions may change. And I just think there's a very bio-individual approach to it as well. What works for one person isn't always going to work for another. And there are some studies that are showing that, especially like with kids with autism, that yes, kids with autism have often a pretty severe overgrowth of parasites, but there are some studies that show that when you give some parasite eggs to autistic kids, that they're seeing improvements. And so I really feel that there's got to be a balance. And I always tell people, if you're cleansing all the time and you're just constantly every single day, I'm taking, anti-parasitics all the time, you are stripping away way too much good gut bacteria. It's the same thing with an antibiotic. We don't want to be taking antibiotics all the time. And that's what, these herbs are natural antibiotics. And so there's definitely got to be a good balance where you're cleansing enough that you're dealing with the overgrowth that's causing the health issues, but you don't want to over cleanse. So yeah, there's definitely a delicate balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. I remember when I was hardcore, like raw vegan, fruitarian, I would, be at Costco or something, and I'd see like a super, overweight person. I'd say like, oh, they're loaded with parasites. Or I would see the opposite, an underweight person, say they're probably overloaded with parasites. Can you make those generalizations? Do you think there's any truth in that mentality? Like just the average person that doesn't take any, maybe they take Costco supplements or something. Do they probably have an overload of parasites, or is there anything you could tell externally like that?
Yeah. And it's so different for everyone, because a lot of people will be like, oh, I wish I had a tapeworm, I'd be skinny. Well, lots of fat people have tapeworms. I had them and I was over 300 pounds. So it really is bio-individual. It has a lot to do with, genetics too. And really just how many other factors are going on. So how inflamed, so for me, I was over 300 pounds. I hardly ate. I was so inflamed. I was living in black mold. I was on a ton of meds. I had a ton of trauma I wasn't addressing. So it can go one way or the other, where you're super, super skinny, underweight, can't put on weight. But the same exact parasites can cause the opposite in someone else. So I always tell people, again, parasites are everywhere. So don't live in fear. Like, I'm not going to live my life. I'm not going to put my bare feet on the ground. I hear this a lot. You're grounding. You're going to pick up worms. And, people are like, just getting crazy with disinfecting everything. They don't want to go in a pool. They don't want to go in a hot tub. And I'm like, you could breathe in an egg when you're out and about. So stop living in fear. In fact, those lower vibrational emotions attract parasitic overgrowth. So get your nervous system regulated. Don't live in fear. And just remember, there's got to be a balance. We need them. They're helping our immune system. They actually boost our immune system when they're in the correct amounts. They're going through the body like a sponge, and they're sucking up, all the other stuff like chemicals and heavy metals and, bacteria, viruses, whatever those are, mold, fungus. So they do help us in the correct amounts. And so one of the things that I really like to focus on with my clients is what is allowing them to get overgrown in the first place. And that's what we want to address. We don't want to kill all the time. We want to figure out what is allowing them to thrive in us and address that stuff. Are you living in mold? Do you have a ton of trauma you haven't worked through? Have you been jabbed up the wazoo and you have heavy metals in the brain, and that's why parasites are going to the brain to protect you, to get the heavy metals. So I think it's important to not forget about those things when we're on that journey. And again, I try not to judge, because that was me. Kill. I was afraid. I was freaked out. I did the same thing. We did the raw vegan. We did fruitarian for a while. I had someone ask me the other day, I have a parasite group where I just try to give a ton of free information and help people. And one lady was like, well, why would I want to eat beef liver if it has liver flukes in it? And, just a lot of fear-based stuff out there, which I think causes more harm than good. So,
yeah, I haven't heard the pool one. That's funny, because I was raised with chlorinated jacuzzis and swimming pools my whole childhood. And I would imagine just the strength of the chemicals. I mean, I could smell them on my skin for hours after getting out.
Right, I know. Yeah,
but you make a good point. Like, it's like this clickbait social media stuff, sensationalist.
Yeah.
Like, I stay off TikTok, but I think that's the worst, where it's just people are trying to, get as much attention. They're like, did you know you can get parasites from this? I'm sure there's a million of those, right? It's like,
yeah, there's so much fear-based clickbait out there. And a lot of people are trying to profit on that, like, you're infested, be careful, you better buy my products, So, there's a lot out there. So, and it's just, there's no way to get away from it. There's just no way. So, the fear-based stuff out there is really unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like your strategy of going after the underlying stuff that's supporting the parasite overgrowth. Mold, and on your website, you even have like dental issues, breast implant illness, Lyme, like a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah, there are so many things that can cause parasites to get overgrown and get out of balance. And that's really what it's about. I think just in life in general is finding a perfect balance. And it's the same thing with parasites. I mean, parasite cleansing goes back. There are reports of people parasite cleansing in some of the earliest writings of man. So it's been around a long time. It's something that a lot of cultures still do regularly, just as maintenance, which I think is important. But really, that really is my biggest focus. So what's going to allow them to get overgrown? And so the big things are, really the biggest one is nervous system dysregulation. And unfortunately, because we're so overstimulated today, almost everybody's nervous system is all dysregulated. We're just go all the time. We're way too busy. Our poor kids are way too busy. Activities on top of activities, overstimulation with, screens, and, nobody's getting out in nature enough. And so there are so many things that can dysregulate your nervous system. It's not just, hey, I had a ton of trauma I haven't worked through, which was a big story. That was a big thing for me in my story, was tons of trauma that I smoothed over with lots of pills. I thought my doctor loved me. I thought my doctor cared about me. And so every time a new pill was added, it was like, oh, I think this is going to help me. But really, I was in a daze from not addressing trauma. And that's a really big one, because those emotions do allow parasites to thrive. Anger, unforgiveness, hatred, if you're feeling, stuck in your life and stagnant, if you're having anxiety, all of those emotions allow parasites to just thrive in the body. So that's where I typically start. And I try to help my clients really regulate their nervous system, get out in nature more, do the simple things, stop being so connected to every little thing and every little news story. 100 years ago, we wouldn't have known about every single thing going on in the world all at the same time. We weren't meant to. We weren't meant to know all of that. And so we go after that. And then, of course, I want to help them figure out what else is allowing the thrive. And those big things are going to be mold exposure, chemical exposure. We have so many exposures to chemicals these days, plastics, heavy metals. And again, those can be from vaccines. It can be from cookware. It can be, there's so many different ways. Our tap water, that's a huge one. So I'm like, let's filter out what you're showering and bathing in. Let's filter out what you're drinking. Processed foods, of course, will allow parasites to thrive. And then those stealth infections. So again, breast implant illness, it's a very real thing. I've worked with lots of clients that have that. Things like root canals. That was, again, in my own journey, my mouth was full of root canals. And so getting those things addressed is super important. And then, just kind of detoxing your life, so to speak, so that there's not an overgrowth, because in the right amount, parasites, again, are great for the immune system, but obviously they cause their own issues when they get overgrown. And really every health issue you can think of can be traced back to overgrowth and overgrowth of parasites. But again, why are they overgrown? So let's go after that first.
Yeah, I love it. When you said parasite cleansing goes way back, I'm a big fan of tobacco, and one of the tobacco books I have, it's on the history of it, and it was saying that they actually used to do tobacco smoke enemas.
Yeah.
South America. I was like, that gives new meaning to that, phrase, blowing smoke up.
It does. I know I've seen your stuff about tobacco, and it's so fascinating because, there are so many things out there that really are helpful and healing for us in the right amounts. And yeah, it's fascinating. Blowing smoke up. I love that.
Yeah, they're tools, right? Like, I think, I like your approach of doing the basic stuff first and getting at that. And then maybe you bring in strategically some things like tobacco or whatever.
Yeah. And I really like to rotate out what my clients are using. So typically I test first. First, we start with let's detox your life. Let's get your nervous system regulated. And then I like to test. I use bioenergetic testing, and I want to see, is your body even ready for a cleanse? Because a lot of people jump into it and the body is not ready. I did it. And sadly, lots of horrible side effects. It was not fun to lose all my hair, but that was just one of the side effects. But I went hardcore. And I do think, for me, I just jumped right into, hey, I'm going to start using fenbendazole and ivermectin and all these things. And I think that there can be a time and a place, but it shouldn't be step one. It can maybe be step 8, 9, or 10 down the road when your body's prepped and ready for it. But again, you have to look at the bioindividuality. Some people do great on those things. Other people don't. And so typically, if I'm dealing with somebody that has never done parasite cleansing before, we obviously work on foundationals and all that stuff first. What's letting the parasites thrive? And then I start with something more gentle, like homeopathic remedies to address parasites. And if you handle that well, then we're going to go to herbs. And if you handle that well and you're kind of seasoned, then maybe we try some stronger things if you want to. But usually by that point, their health issues are disappearing enough that we don't need to even go into anything that's super, super aggressive. And I'm not a fan of aggressive anyway. It's just because it stresses the body out, and parasite cleansing, if you go too aggressively, can be very dangerous. So I'm a huge fan of low, slow, gentle. Let's see how you feel and just kind of go from there.
Yeah, that's a good approach. And I think like a common misconception is just getting parasites from traveling. But
Yeah.
I think more people are becoming aware now, maybe because of social media, that you can get it from a lot of ways, like you mentioned near the beginning, like even unwashed veggies and undercooked meat. It's my understanding those are like two major sources of.
Yeah. So some of the big sources, and again, like there is a huge misconception. Like, I haven't done any traveling. I mean, that's what my doctor said to me. And when I started parasite cleansing and I was passing actual parasites, I brought them to my doctor because we did stool testing. And he was like, nothing's coming back. You don't have parasites. And he did the same thing. He literally thought I was crazy. He's like, stool test said you don't have parasites. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's an asparagus spine since you eat so many vegetables. And that was the moment I was like, okay, I don't think I'm going to be coming to the doctor anymore for this. But yeah, you can get them anywhere. It's not just, hey, I went traveling. We can get them. They're really rampant in the water supply. So I'm always like telling my clients, we've got to filter the water. Got to be a good system. Got to get that Mitolife water system in because that's a huge source. Basically, every body of water in the whole world has Giardia in it. Even the bodies of water in the US. So again, don't live in fear. Don't be like, oh, I'm never swimming in a river again. But they're just everywhere. So water supply is a big one. Undercooked meat is a big one. So sushi, any kind of undercooked meat. Yes, they can also be on fruits and veggies. But we get them passed down too. They can be passed from mother to child in utero. They're going to be passed from person to person. We can get them from our pets. But again, I always tell people like we have to make our body a place where they can't thrive. And so they're going to thrive because of those other factors Matt mentioned, as well as, hey, if you don't have enough stomach acid. So that's your first line of defense. That's another foundational thing I work on with my clients. Do you have enough stomach acid? We need to build that up because the goal should be if you get an exposure, your stomach acid burns it up, your immune system takes care of it, they can't thrive. So yeah, they can be anywhere, not just if you're traveling.
That's a great list. And yeah, the pet one is so funny. I mean, talking about clickbait, like all the time people send me these reels of, you're gonna die from your cat. Yeah, the crazy cat woman and the toxoplasma. I've had so much fun over the last year, just picking that apart. And it's I've even seen the comparison of dog parasites versus cat parasites. I'm like, he actually has those switched, and there's just so much misinformation out there with that stuff. And just the cat hate is really funny. I think people use it as an excuse to hate on cats, saying they're going to make you crazy. It's like,
I know
there's more to the story.
There's so much more to the story. And the thing with again, people take things to the extreme all the time. And yeah, so there are things we can get from our pets, but what allows that to thrive in the first place? And so it's not just cats. It's not just dogs. It's, any kind of animal you've ever been in contact with could possibly give you a parasite, but that doesn't mean it is going to thrive in your body. And, if you're talking about crazy cat ladies, there's probably something more going on with the crazy cat lady that allowed the parasites to thrive in her body and make her crazy. Maybe she's a shut-in because she has trauma she hasn't addressed, or maybe she's eating processed foods. Who knows? But yeah, there's so much fear-based stuff out there. And that right there, just living in fear like that is, it's going to allow them to thrive. So time to kind of stop doing that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Not enough stomach acid was an interesting one too. And that could be a lot of different things, like not enough zinc or not enough protein intake. There's a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Antibiotic use. Again, trauma, stress, and anxiety is a huge one with depleting stomach acid too, for sure.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Recently, I've been getting back into coffee enemas, and it's so difficult to do them daily just to find the time for it. So I've been averaging like every 2 or 3 days or something like that. But even that, I feel a huge difference. 'Cause I used to be really consistent with them, and it's a really powerful therapy. I mean, just that and sauna. That's what like some HTMA guest said on my show, and I'm like, yeah, people just did those 2 things. Yeah, that's covering so many bases, right? Like,
yeah, it really is, and that's really part of what I love about foundationals with my clients is, and people are like, what? I can't believe that, they didn't even do anything aggressive like ivermectin and their symptoms went away. I'm like, that's what I'm saying is that I see so much more success with my clients when we're working on those foundationals. Let's do the coffee enemas. Let's get you sweating. Let's, kind of move the lymph, those kind of things. Parasites will start coming out on their own just with those things without extreme measures. So I think that that's really where the success lies is, and those things really, the coffee enemas, they're stimulating the vagus nerve, which ties hand in hand with the nervous system. Like all of those practices of really calming the body and helping the body just naturally start to release toxins is going to address parasitic overgrowth, I feel, much better than going to some of those extreme measures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And liver health. Really proven that. And, what are some of your favorite ways to move the lymph? Like, have you, like, especially if people can't, I don't know, if they have to exercise indoors, like a mini trampoline or something like that.
So what I do, for me in my journey, I could hardly walk. So I had to start with simple things like, I'm going to just have a gentle dance party in my living room. And I could only do 5 minutes at a time in the beginning. And so I always tell my clients, whatever you can do, just do it in small increments. So moving the lymph, sweating is a great way to get things that are stuck out of the lymph. Hot bath in filtered water is equivalent to a lymphatic massage. So that's a great way to kind of move some things. Vibration plates have been really great for my clients that can't physically walk yet or have a difficult time walking, just kind of shaking things up in the lymph. Dry brushing is great. Obviously, walking is fabulous. Trampolines can be very by individual. Some people do it a little bit too aggressively and stir too much up. So, but yeah, mini trampolines are great as well. Even if you have like a bike, an exercise bike that, is stationary and that's where you're using. Anything that you can use, I say is good.
Awesome. With any of your clients, have you had experience with iron stuff? Because, I've delved into that on both sides and and deficiency. It's funny because you can kind of use parasites to support either argument. Everyone's overloaded or everyone's deficient because of parasites.
I will say that in my practice, I notice a bigger trend when I do testing that most of my clients that have some pretty severe parasitic overgrowth also have some sort of anemia, whether it's iron deficiency or B12 or copper or B6. There's usually something at play there with some sort of anemia going on where they're deficient because the pathogen is feeding off of it.
And is that where the overload comes in, where it's an overload because they're stealing your B6, your copper, your B12, and it's not enough for the person to maintain their natural processes, everything.
Right, exactly. And really when it comes to deficiencies like that, not only is there usually some sort of pathogenic overgrowth, and it could be parasites or Lyme disease is another big one. I see undiagnosed Lyme disease all the time. And that feeds off of nutrients like that as well. But typically there's also a factor of low stomach acid where the client can absorb the nutrients from what they're eating. And then we have the parasites stealing the nutrients at the same time. And the parasites are overgrown because low stomach acid and, other factors. So yeah, it's never usually just one thing. It's usually a combo. But yeah, there's a huge connection there between parasitic overgrowth and, low iron, low B vitamins, low copper.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Did you ever do the turpentine sugar protocol thing?
I did. I did it all. I did all the crazy stuff. It's not something that I use with the clients in my practice. If they decide to do that, I just tell them like, that's your choice. That's not something that I advocate for or specialize in, just because now I just find that the gentler approaches have been so much more successful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty hardcore. I remember having like mind-altering experiences taking the sugar cube soaked in turpentine.
Yeah.
Potent.
Yeah. There are so many out there. I mean, like the borax thing. And I've seen a lot of times clients will come to me after they've done all the extreme stuff and then their symptoms got worse or, they started having issues. And so, yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff out there that, again, some people do really great on it. So I'm a huge fan of bioindividuality. But
have you seen people do well on like colon hydrotherapy sessions? Or?
Yes. Yeah. And that's I did colon hydrotherapy as well, and that was super helpful for me. Enemas are the first thing that I started with when I started on my own healing journey. I came across the Gerson method and really was gung-ho about that. And it was a huge factor in helping me really, get rid of stuff. But colon hydrotherapy too, lots of parasites passing with that stuff too. I've seen a lot. So yeah, but again, it's bio-individual. So some people do really well on it and other people feel horrible afterward because their body wasn't ready or they didn't replenish their electrolytes enough afterward, stuff like that. But a lot of people do really well on it.
Yeah, I think there's usually that little window you could see the stuff going out of you. And I was expecting to see something from the movie Alien, but it wasn't that exciting. So.
For me, I remember I was shocked because I had been doing enemas for a long time consistently. And so I was like, there's not going to be nothing coming out of me. And I was surprised. The lady was like, oh, you basically just had 5 bowel movements. I'm like, how could that be in me? TMI. But yeah, it's crazy the stuff that comes out.
Yeah. Did you ever do like the liver flushes, like to get stones out?
Yeah, I've done gallbladder flushes, liver flushes. And again, it's typically with my clients in my practice, a lot of people will come to me and they're like, I got to do a liver flush first or gallbladder flush. Some of those can be so harsh too. So I really prefer, like I said, the gentler stuff. Let's use some gentle homeopathics to flush things out. Let's use castor oil packs. Let's do things that are a little more gentle to get the same effect without you, having to not be able to leave home because you're stuck to the toilet for days or whatever, or drinking down, gallons of this horribly tasting stuff just to, get the effects. And, there are some camps that say that drinking some of like the olive oil and stuff for these flushes, that the stones you're seeing really are just
I've heard that.
Hardened globs of it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's interesting for sure. And you really emphasize binders. Is the idea there, if parasites are dying inside of you, they're releasing all that stuff you were talking about, the heavy metals, the chemicals.
Yeah. And I really start my clients on binders before we even address parasites, because as we're working on moving the lymph, and I'm working with a lot of people that have never exercised, never moved the lymph, or they haven't done it in so many years and they're so toxic that anytime you're going to like get a massage or take a hot bath or get in the sauna or exercise of any kind, you're going to be stirring up crud that's been stuck in the lymph for a while. So the binders will go in and help to grab some of that stuff to get it out of the body. And I've just found, after working with hundreds and hundreds of clients at this point, that the binders make such a huge difference. And I'm not married to one binder. There are so many great ones out there. So I think you have to find what works for you, switch it up if you want. But yeah, it really, really helps to ease the symptoms of, hey, I just stirred a bunch of stuff up and now my liver and kidneys have to filter that all over again. We want to prevent that from happening if we can with the binders.
Yeah, it's wild how quickly they work. Like I keep them on hand if I ever get food poisoning.
Yeah.
It's happened several times this year where I'll have, nice steak dinner. And I don't know if it was just thawed out too long or wasn't frozen properly, but it's just like a tight, knot in my stomach.
Yeah.
So I just take a charcoal mix or whatever and back up and running in like an hour or something.
Yeah, they do. They work so quickly. And there are so many great binders out there. Charcoal, I always tell people, great to have on hand for like an acute situation, like you mentioned. I'm not a fan of using charcoal longer than like a 3-day period regularly, just because it can be constipating for a lot of people and, defeats the purpose of getting the drainage pathways opened. And some studies suggest that if you take it long term, it can start to cause some nutritional deficiencies. But I think it's great for like, hey, I'm going to use it a couple days for food poisoning or, something like that. But yeah, binders, I think they're really underutilized and can really just help kind of grab onto some of that stuff that people are stirring up with some of those activities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I noticed chlorella too. That's what I learned about when I started my raw. I think it was like 2010. I started slamming tablets.
Yeah, another great one.
And I see you work with or you focus on biofilms too with clients. Can you kind of go into that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So when we have pathogenic and parasitic overgrowth, and again, it could be, I say pathogenic because it's not always just parasites. It could be undiagnosed Lyme disease or something else where things are just getting overgrown in the body. And the longer that they're in us, the more they're producing biofilm. And this kind of slimy, sticky substance is what they make so that they can hide in it and stay in your body longer. They use it as a nutrient source. And biofilm causes a lot of inflammation in the body. So I try to really go over that with clients on let's make sure that as we are addressing parasites, we're also working on utilizing certain things to bust up that biofilm. And so, again, with biofilm, it really makes it hard for your immune system to address the parasites because the biofilm kind of gets in the way. So, and I always preface this, a lot of people are taking Mimosa pudica, which is also called Para-1 for cell core. And Mimosa pudica is a great product. It helps grab on to biofilms in the body. But if you put it in water, you let it sit, you'll see it's going to look like ropeworm or biofilm. And so a lot of people in these groups are like, look at all this stuff I'm passing. Guess what? It's just the Mimosa pudica seed. So I always tell people, if you're using that, please know that what you think you're passing may not actually be that. So there are certain things we can use to bust up those biofilms. And some of those things are like caprylic acid, cistus tea, chlorella, cinnamon. Some of the dissolvedol is great. Those systemic enzymes are amazing for busting up biofilm. Garlic is another great one. Raw honey, ginger, magnesium helps bust up biofilm too. Neem, there's a huge long list. Ozone too, but like I always tell people, go go gently with the ozone because you can release too many toxins at once and then feel horrible, especially if you don't use a binder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the ozone gas insufflations, the rectal insufflations with ozone I responded really well to them. I didn't ever get like a Herxheimer reaction, but I definitely felt like it was working. It was doing something.
Yeah. A lot of my clients have responded really well to those too.
I noticed too, you talk about, like in the toilet, like how to tell if you passed a parasite or a biofilm. And you're saying a parasite will be firm and harder to break apart, and a biofilm will be jelly-like and easy to break apart.
Yeah.
Like back in my raw vegan days, I would literally have, kind of gross, but chopsticks, and I would be in there, digging through the trenches, trying to see what came out of me. And a lot of it actually looked like the pictures that you have on your website of the biofilm, like that slimy.
Yeah. And it probably was because people have so much biofilm in them and don't realize like just how much inflammation it causes. And I get people saying this a lot in my parasite group, like, I've been cleansing and I've seen nothing. Does that mean I don't have parasites? Like, over 60% of parasites are microscopic, so you're not going to see anything. But unless you're really digging around with your chopsticks and stuff, it's very normal to not see anything at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's funny your doctor's comment with the asparagus spine, because I know over the years, like I saw in groups, like tomato skins are a tricky one because those look like, was it liver flukes?
Liver flukes, yeah. So I always, when people post, I'm like, if you haven't eaten anything that looks like that in the last few days, then probably is an older liver fluke that's been dead for a while in your body. But, if you ate tomatoes in the last few days, can't say for sure.
That's interesting that over 60% of parasites are microscopic because, one of the guys' protocol that I followed over the years, he recommended using like a strainer in the toilet. It gets super gross and graphic, but going to the, going number two.
Me, I promise. I get like sending me poop pictures all day long.
It's like that way it catches, the bigger stuff. But if over 60% are microscopic, then I don't know if that's worth it.
I know. I always tell people, like, if you really want to strain through things, fine. But like, in my opinion, after doing it myself, and it was a lot of work and disgusting, like, it's just, each their own.
Right. Have you, like, what's the craziest story you've heard from a client? Like, have any of your clients have like giant worms come out of them and they sent you a picture?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I get tons of pictures all the time, but I mean, in my own healing journey, when I first started cleansing, I was shocked. I mean, I had things coming out that were over a foot long, and I was shocked. And that's the kind of stuff I was bringing to my doctor. And I know now they were roundworms. My doctor didn't know what it was. He thought it was asparagus spine, but I have had some extreme things where people start to cleanse. And again, this is usually before they come to me and they went really aggressive and their body wasn't ready. And so they started cleansing so aggressively that things were coming out of the skin or their eyeballs or the nose. People have coughed things up. So, which is terrifying, terrifying. And that's very similar to what happened to me. So yeah, there's crazy stuff that happens a lot.
Is the rope worm real? Because that was like, raw vegan legend where it's the, some people said it's just the intestinal lining sloughing off. Right?
I'm really on the fence about this because there are a lot of people will come to me showing, sending me pictures of what they're passing. And they're like, look, you can see it has a sucker, it has a head. It's been, feeding off of me. And I'm really careful to not, I don't want anyone to feel that they're crazy. especially when you're going through that. Like, it's terrifying. And I know, like, for me in the beginning of my journey, I really believed parasites were out to get me. They were like from the devil or something and scary. I've been there. I don't believe that way anymore. But I know that when people are in the thick of that, I want them to be able to have a safe place to come to. But I have found, ropeworm to be just a combination of like biofilm, mucoid plaque, sometimes intestinal stuff. A lot of times it's dead parasites all kind of wrapped together. And a really big one for ropeworm is often that mimosa pudica, which people are taking like crazy. And if they would, there's a video that I found recently where a guy did an experiment for mimosa pudica. And I don't know if you've seen this, but he let it soak and then took it out, and it looks just like ropeworm, what people are passing. So that's why I always tell people, like, is it really ropeworm? Again, I don't want to say I don't believe people, because when you're in the thick of it, you're sensitive and you're desperately looking for somebody to believe you after your doctors have told you you're crazy. So yeah, I can't really say for sure what it is, but I have found in my experience, it's usually mimosa pudica, a lot of dead parasites and parasitic die-off kind of all wrapped together with biofilm and stuff like that.
Okay. I meant to ask earlier with bioenergetic testing, like that's something I've played around with for years, mostly at health conferences. You pay $50 or $100 or whatever, and you put your thumb on a little silver thing, and then it's a readout. And I personally haven't found it to be that accurate or I guess mostly consistent with the results. Like if you do multiple tests in a row. But I'm just curious, like your method and how you got into it, why you believe in it, and all that.
Yeah. So for me, just in my own healing journey, I tried every testing method you can think of out there. And when I came to find bioenergetic testing, for me, it was very spot on at what's really going on in my body. Especially when I like to kind of match things up too with HTMA as well, and just kind of see, how's this looking? So with my clients, so I use I don't know if you've ever heard of a Quest 4 machine.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
But I'm looking at, so when I'm testing for a client, I'm doing either a hair from anywhere on the body, or it could be nail clippings with a saliva sample. And so the machine, we test things against the machine, and then we're looking at energetic imbalances in the body. So nutritional deficiencies, toxins or pathogens that are causing stress in the body, hormonal energetic imbalances. And so for me, I have found that to be really spot on for my clients every single time at really identifying, well, they've had, especially when I do a health questionnaire. So when people come to me, I do a 20-minute consult. I have them fill out a health questionnaire. I want to see what their symptoms are. And based on their symptoms, I can usually say, sounds like they have low stomach acid, probably have, whatever. And I want to match it up. And so when I do the testing, it's always interesting to see they do have low stomach acid, and, they definitely have parasitic overgrowth, or, if there's an emotional component and, they're dealing with trauma that's not been addressed, usually it's going to show me that, their nervous system is in a lot of distress on the scan. And so I try to make a game plan for my clients based on what the scan says. Now, if they've done other testing, I'll look at that too, and just kind of take everything into consideration, whether it's HTMA or they had blood work done, and I'm looking at it with a holistic eye, so to speak. But for me, I've really found that the bioenergetic testing has been really instrumental in helping me really identify the big stressors so I can make a game plan for the client.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That uses saliva and hair or nail clippings. Yeah. It makes me think of like the Rife machine I don't have running right now, but it's a little affordable spooky 2 thing, the remote. Yeah. feature. And I think that you could have a diagnostic attachment or something you can get. I haven't played with, but
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about that. Have you used Rife or frequency machines with success on yourself or with clients? Or...
Yeah. So I've used them. I am a huge fan of frequencies. Everything has its own frequency, and I think it's so fascinating. So I've used them on myself. I have a lot of clients. Now, when we're working on regulating like the nervous system, I'm a huge fan of, find some frequencies that calm the nervous system that make you feel good when you listen to them. But the Rife machines too, lots of clients with success with the Rife machines. So I think that frequencies play a big role. And that's part of why I love the bioenergetic testing too, because I want to, even pathogens have their own energetic frequency. And so it's always fascinating to see what pops up as far as that goes. But yeah, Rife machines are great. Frequencies in general, they can harm us or they can heal us. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I'm a huge fan of like when I'm making a game plan for a client, what can we do that's free? What can we do that's inexpensive? Like there are so many ridiculously expensive parasite protocols on the market. Not a fan. I'm not a fan. Like, when I was working on healing my body, I was a broke single mom on disability. So I really try to carry over into my practice. Like, let's find high quality things that you can do at home that aren't going to break the piggy bank, because there's so much that can be done that shouldn't cost hundreds of dollars.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great approach to it. Yeah. A couple of years ago, my oldest cat Lyra, she got worms because they eat,
things
indoor outdoor cats, and I think for a while I was seeing like these little white worms crawling around her anus area, and it was disconcerting. And I had never dosed her on, I think at that point I wanted to give her an anti-parasite, and so I set up a Rife machine right by her little cat tower, and I would just run it all day when she was there. And it seemed to work. Like I stopped seeing them, but then I think it was like a year or something later, they came back. And so I finally used those little pill pockets things, and then wrapped a little capsule in it or whatever. And some cats, you just have to syringe it straight in their mouth, if they don't
if they don't
capsules. Right. But it worked, and they're gone. But that's an interesting thing. Like that, when there's grass out front, we'll see the cats go out there and eat the grass. And it seems like a lot of animals know, like the reason why cats eat grass is from what I've read, to move parasites through. It's kind of like anti-parasitic.
Yeah. Yeah. They're so much smarter than them. They really don't
Yeah. It's interesting though. Yeah. I didn't feel good when I was like pretty low fiber for a couple of years. Now that I'm eating fiber every day, I feel so much better.
Yeah.
But we have so many questions to get through. Do you want to start?
Let's do it.
Something?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good way to talk about what we missed here, because I'm sure I have stuff that I want to ask you. So this is a good one. Does cleansing during the full moon actually do anything? Is that a good time to?
Yes, that's the perfect time, actually. So during the full moon, our serotonin levels increase, which allows parasites to easily move through the body and come out of hiding into the intestinal tract, where they're going to breed and lay eggs and be all nasty. So full moon is the best time to cleanse. And I make full moon cleansing calendars every year so that people know these are the optimal days of the month to cleanse, because that's when parasites are most vulnerable to anti-parasitics. And there really are 11 days out of the month that they're most vulnerable. And it starts 5 days before the actual full moon and runs all the way to 5 days after. Now, that doesn't mean you have to cleanse all 11 days. I always tell people, listen to your body. Some people just do like, hey, a day or two before the full moon until a day or two after. So any of those days during that 11-day period are the optimal times to cleanse.
That's great. Yeah, I definitely feel it more if I cleanse during the full moon. It's even the rife frequencies, they feel more sensitive to those.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I found that to be true too.
Are we always doomed to have parasites if we eat raw fish and sushi?
So I won't say doomed but yes, we are always going to have parasites, always, and we want some. Now, if you're eating raw fish and raw sushi, you definitely need to be doing regular parasite cleansing, and you definitely need to make sure you have enough stomach acid. I'm not a fan of telling people don't eat this, don't eat that, because a lot of people love sushi. But if you're going to eat it, you need to know that if you have low stomach acid, you are more susceptible to whatever's in that sushi getting crazy overgrown in the body. And if you're not doing regular parasite cleansing 2 to 4 times per year as maintenance, you are going to be more susceptible to parasites getting overgrown.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true, but years ago, I was one of the raw vegan guys was saying whenever you mix alcohol with the meal, it completely shuts digestion down, which there's probably so many variables, right? Like, is it a June shine, or is it like, does it have lemon in it? Does it have
right
acidity of it? I mean, it's probably not as cut and dry, but I can imagine.
I think there are very few things that are really cut and dry, honestly.
You're right.
The older I get, the more I realize that.
Yeah, we don't have good sushi up here in Idaho, so I just don't eat it because I don't feel it's safe. But down in Southern California, I think it was great. And I used to always take chlorella tablets because I was more concerned about the metals.
Yeah.
I wonder if it would work to like bring a gentle anti-parasitic to take with it, or not to get neurotic about it, but if you're eating it like a couple times a year or something, if that's worth doing.
Yeah. I don't think it would hurt, honestly. And just make sure, even I would, I've told clients, if you're gonna do sushi and you're gonna have it, first of all, don't be fearful about it. Enjoy it, but maybe take a digestive enzyme that has HCl in it before you have it, and then make sure that that full moon cycle, you're gonna do a good cleanse. And a binder is great to have too, just in case after you eat it, you notice that, maybe it was contaminated and I don't feel so good. But yeah.
I probably have the same risk because I eat raw oysters up here because it's the season for those, and eating raw seafood is just a little bit of a higher risk.
Right.
But, so this is a good one we haven't delved into yet.
Yeah.
Is it true that parasites can impact our thoughts? How do we know we're being affected?
Yeah. Really, just about every kind of mental health issue can be traced back to parasitic overgrowth. And again, what allowed them to thrive in the body. But yeah, they can impact your cravings. They can impact, if you have issues with substance abuse, they can definitely impact your thought process. We see a lot more depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar, anything related to mental health is often related to parasitic overgrowth. Huge connection.
Interesting. I wonder if that's I've just been released a lithium. I've been going down the rabbit hole with like lithium and how it helps with schizophrenia and depression, and bipolar and all those things. I wonder if it's tied to different minerals, and there's these little deficiencies that kind of just all add up to.
It does. And it really, and I see that a lot with the testing too, is number one, when I have clients that are dealing with mental health issues, when I do a bioenergetic scan, almost always they're low in lithium, almost every single time. And there's a parasitic issue going on too, and usually low stomach acid, all those things combined, because they're not absorbing the minerals, the parasites are eating the minerals, and so on. So yeah, there's a huge connection.
Let's see. Garlic enemas. Do you recommend garlic?
My individuality there. So some people, it can be harsh. Some people love it the way they feel. They have fabulous results. And then other people, it's way too much. I don't have people start right off with organic coffee enemas. We do like a filtered warm water enema or an organic chamomile tea enema first. Again, slow, gentle, let's ease into things. But yeah, some people do fabulous on garlic enemas. But if you're really wanting to tempt out parasites, here's the thing. If you really want to tempt them out, you could do a milk enema. Or put a little bit of like honey in your enema or blackstrap molasses, because that'll really tempt them out of hiding. Versus the garlic, and they're like, get away from me, let's suck back in.
I heard of that story, like it's a raw vegan friend I have, and he was saying that you fast for 3 days and then get warm milk and then like sit
in the back
or something. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. It definitely works for some people. And that's another thing in the communities. Like when I see people, and I did it too, like starve them out. That's the worst advice, because you want to give them a reason to come out of hiding. If you are starving and fasting all the time and you're just taking herbs like crazy, they're going to burrow deeper. There's no reason for them to want to come out of hiding. You want to tempt them out, which is why I'm not a fan of completely eliminating all carbs when you're doing a parasite cleanse, because you want them to come out so that then you can hit them with the herbs.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think it was like 6 or 7 years ago or something. I saw like the dry fasting parasite protocol kind of going around. And
I did it. I was blacking out because I had been dry fasting so long, and I'm like, this is good. Power through. No, not good.
Talk about aggressive. Yeah. This is a good one. Is our immune system able to handle Lyme and co-infections without antimicrobial support?
So if it's overgrown and causing stress to your system, then your immune system is not handling it well. So here's the thing, as somebody who has Lyme disease and every co-infection that goes with it, you can never get rid of it completely, but you can eliminate the symptoms. And so like I tell my clients, we are more pathogen and virus and bacteria than we are human cell. So stop trying to kill yourself literally by, getting so aggressive with everything. If the body is stressed out because of other factors, then your symptoms will rise to the surface. So for example, I had healed myself to the point of I had no symptoms. I was feeling amazing. And then last year, my little sister unexpectedly passed away. And all of a sudden, symptoms I had not had in many, many years rose to the surface. And so when I did a scan on myself, not surprising, Borrelia was popping up, Epstein-Barr was popping up. All these things that hadn't stressed my system out in a really long time popped up because my nervous system was dysregulated from grief. I was in shock. I wasn't eating. I wasn't sleeping. Like everything was all turned around. And so if things are stressing out your nervous system in that way, it's also going to stress out your immune system so that all your symptoms rise. So and this is why I'm a huge believer in nervous system work first, because if your nervous system is regulated, all your symptoms can go into remission. It doesn't mean that you don't still have Lyme disease bacteria in your body or parasites in your body or other co-infections of Lyme disease in your body, but it does mean that those things are no longer stressing out your immune system, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, that was awesome.
Did it answer the question though?
I think so. I like that you keep bringing up the nervous system dysregulation, because that's something that I've been working on myself this year. I think we all are, after the crazy last 3 years.
Right? I know.
But I'm sure you can relate as someone that like has a business using social media, and for some reason, Instagram specifically, I've been consciously taking a step back, because I was responding for the last 3 years to 100 questions a day for free, just trying to help as many people as possible, just drained myself dry. And, now people get mad when you don't respond, but it's like, you got to take care of your nervous system. And I think whether you have a business on social media or not, I notice people that are looking for information, they're just on their screen all day long. And that's a dysregulator, right? Just looking for answers all day.
Yeah, it really is. And I have so many friends that will like call me freaking out about, did you hear about what happened in da, 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 da? And I'm like, no, I didn't hear about it. And I don't want to hear about it, because all I can do is what I'm called to do, and help people in my circle and work on my 40-acre land so I can live off the grid and like take care of my loved ones. That's all I can do. That doesn't mean I can't pray or send good thoughts. There are real people hurting in the world, but it's not my job to stress and cry about it. In fact, I had this conversation with my mom recently. I love you, Mom, if you hear this. But my mom, and I picked up this trait from her, tend to be like overly empathetic, a worrier. And my mom, I went to visit them. She was looking at her phone. She started bawling. And I'm like, Mom, what's wrong? She's like, I watched this news thing and I just saw that this baby got beaten to death. I'm like, Mom, put your phone down. You need to stop, unfollow this, stop watching this. It's not good for your nervous system. Look at how traumatized you are from that. It's not okay. It's not good. But yeah, the nervous system, and I wish in my own healing journey, before I ever was a practitioner, that I had known about this, because that should have been where I started. Instead of, I'm going to just start taking all these hardcore things, I should have worked on learning to be still, I should have been doing limbic brain retraining to work through the trauma. But really, as a business owner, and again, like you said, whether you're a business owner or not, we're so glued to this stuff all the time, and it's so unhealthy for us. But yeah, as a business owner, as somebody who gets somewhere between 60 to 100 messages a day of poop pictures, is this a parasite? What should I be taking? What do I do? And as somebody who has in the past been a chronic people pleaser, when I launched my practice, it was really hard for me and I still struggle with that. And my husband, thank God, is really good about putting that in check. Like, no, it's not your job. No, not everyone's going to like you, and that's okay. But especially since my sister passed this year, I've really realized that I've cut my hours back drastically. And I've really become a stickler about, I only work from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Tuesday through Friday. And if it's not in that time window, you're not going to hear from me. And super hard for me to do that, but so needed. Because again, as my symptoms flared with that happening with my sister, I realized I have to practice what I preach. I got to be outside. I need to work on my nervous system again, clearly, because symptoms are popping up. I need to do some work. And so I sought out somebody that I see. And I just told my clients, I would be telling you to do the same thing, do something drastic. And I stay off social media from Friday afternoon until Tuesday. And that's hard to do. It was so hard to do. I kept finding myself in the beginning, like wanting to look at my phone. And thank God I'm to a point now where I don't even care. I'm not even going to look at it. I'm going to read my books. Like getting back to those things you loved as a kid. I was a bookworm and I wanted to just go lay in the grass and read a book. And I'm doing that stuff again, because that is really what feeds and calms the nervous system.
That's great. Yeah. I find myself forgetting my phone, forgetting where I left it. I'm like, wow, I'm actually making progress. This is great.
Yes, I know. That's awesome. I wish more people would do that. I'm always preaching that to my clients. Like, you're going to hear things from me you don't want to hear, but that's what you're paying me for.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of people that are super aggressively against, the Neuralink. Like, they're going to chip us all in the brain. And it's like, meanwhile, they're already cyborgs with their phone.
They're already, I know. Like, I know. I know. I saw a great video the other day about a guy that was like, nothing's different. Nothing's new under the sun. Like, it's just we know more about it now because of the age of information. Like, stop freaking out that the world is ending and it's the apocalypse. Like, you're ruining your life by stressing out about that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a great message. I mean, even in the health community, people want me to comment on like international affairs. And I do, I don't care what people think, my opinion, but at the same time, it's like, I notice people are so emotional about what's going on outside of their homeland. Meanwhile, it's like countries falling apart. It's been hemorrhaging since the early 1900s. It's like things are a mess. We're worried about all these other people and on the other side of the world.
I know it's sad. I do get some people that will continually send me things like TikTok videos or like an hour-long thing that they want me to listen to. I'm like, I'm so sorry, but I'm on my phone for work and I don't want to be on my phone when I'm not on work. I'm not doing work and I'm just going to be honest. I'm not going to watch your hour video that you sent me.
It's a big time investment. Yeah. This is a really good one. And something I've experienced with the Terminator 2, thoughts on Hulda Clark and the Zapper. When I was a teacher for 4 years, substitute teacher and teacher's assistant, I would just have that in my pocket. It was like the two little copper electrodes, and I would just hold it all day when my hands were in my pocket, and felt absolutely nothing. And I'm pretty sensitive. And then I moved to like the Soto one, where the on the radial alder, and I was total, like I had extreme Herxheimer's first couple of days from that. Oh, this blows the Zapper out of the water.
I know. So first of all, I love Hulda Clark. I have all her books. I'm a giant nerd, so I'm always buying books and reading, but I love her stuff. And again, as we touched on before, I think that there are so many different types of zappers out there, and I think you have to find what works for you. And some people do really well on them. Other people are like, I felt nothing, like you mentioned, or I used something else and I had major Herx reactions. So low and slow and gentle. And I always tell people use a binder with the Zapper even, because it really seems to help diminish some of the Herx symptoms.
Yeah, that's a good tip. So Hulda Clark, like that protocol was focused on using the Zapper, right? But I think you combine herbs and yeah. She had herbs and stuff too that she combined. Yeah, but some people just use the Zapper and feel like that worked for them. So I just think it's bio-individual, and that's why I always tell people, like, I really loathe a lot of these blanket one-size-fits-all protocols for parasite cleansing. Everyone do this. Buy my $300 thing, and and it so many people come to me after they've spent thousands, I'm talking thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars on expensive protocols. And then when they just do foundational work, or, hey, I'm going to buy this, $17 homeopathic, and they can't believe it works so well. And I'm like, this is what I'm saying. Don't use expensive protocols, and it's very bio-individual. Mm-hmm. Have you ever played with the little infopathy thing, the little like make your own homeopathy and water thing?
So that's something. So I have to rein myself in, because I'm always wanting to like take classes or expand my knowledge even more. And I have to really find balance with that, because I'm really interested, especially as we're like building our homestead. I told my husband, I'm like nerding out over making my own homeopathics and herbal tinctures, and I can't wait. But I'm going to try to just like do for me if I want to, or experiment and see what happens from there. Yeah, I love that stuff.
That's great. Let's see. I think I'll know your answer to this one, and you kind of been saying it throughout the show, but black walnut, clove, wormwood, they said hit it hard or slow and steady for how long? So again, bio-individual, right? Like you've been saying, and I'd imagine it's not hit it hard as your reply to that.
Hate it hard is definitely not my reply. So if you were coming to me with that advice, I would say number one, don't use it unless you can easily work up a sweat and you're having at least 2 easy to pass, well-formed bowel movements per day. If you cannot sweat easily and you can't poop, don't start there. We need to start by getting the bowels moving, getting yourself regularly sweating with the binder. And then typically, so there are so many great herbs out there. And I always tell people, if it were me, knowing what I know now, I would start with 1/4 of the dosage on that bottle. And you don't want to use it without a binder because you don't want to, everything that you're killing off and all the things the parasites release, you got to use a binder with it. And usually most people need some good liver and kidney support as well when they're cleansing. But yeah, don't hit it hard. Start very low and then gently increase and see how you feel. If you start to feel horrible, you're breaking out in rashes, you're constipated, you feel like you're dying, you're having, like horrible herx reactions, that's a sign that you need to back off on the herbs and increase the drainage work. Go back to what's going to help me poop, what's going to help me sweat, what's going to move the lymph and kind of ease the strain on my liver and kidneys, because we don't want to kill off more than your body can eliminate. And then what was the other question? When to use it? How long?
How long was, yeah.
Okay, so parasites adapt and become immune to things very quickly. So you don't want to use the same products over and over and over. I am a huge fan of switching things up regularly, and which is why I always tell people, again, there are fabulous organic tinctures that are super inexpensive on the market. I like to tell people have at least 3 different herbs on hand that you can switch up when you're doing a full moon cleanse. If you have major health issues, then you're going to want to cleanse 3 to 12 months in a row during the full moon cycles. The goal, some people need a little longer. The goal is you're going to cleanse every full moon cycle until your health issues start going away. Then you can back down and do 2 to 4 cleanses for a year as maintenance.
Okay. That's interesting that parasites adapt, so you don't want to use the same herbs over and over.
Yeah.
Kind of get used to them.
Exactly. And I see a lot of people, again, come to me and they've been like, I use this expensive protocol. I've been doing it for 18 months. I'm like, the protocol's great, too pricey in my opinion, but the product is great, but you're using the same thing every month for 18 months in a row. That's why you're not getting results, because they've totally become immune to what you're using. So it's really great to switch things up.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Someone asked, anything liver fluke related, had to pass them symptoms, related diagnosis?
So liver flukes don't just go to the liver. They can actually travel just about anywhere in the body. They really do love to burrow into the gallbladder, the pancreas, and the liver, though, I will say. So liver flukes can live in you for a really, really long time. Their life cycle is like a 40-year time period. So again, same thing with any parasite. You're going to want to make sure that you have good stomach acid, that you're being able to sweat, you're being able to poop, and that you're switching up the products that you're using for the liver flukes. And I've had a lot of great success too with castor oil packs right over that liver gallbladder meridian, helping because, liver flukes can, when they burrow in, especially into the gallbladder and liver, they can create, liver stones, gallstones, stuff like that.
Awesome. This is a good question. I'm curious your answer. How do we kill parasites on food before we consume it? Ozonated water. Like, for example, when I have, store-bought raw greens, making a salad or whatever, I'll just ozonate it. Heavily, turn the fan on in the bathroom, and I've seen little bugs float up to the surface.
Yes. I love my ozone bubbler. You can get one for they're not very pricey. You get so much bang for your buck. So I'm a huge fan of an ozone bubbler for fruits and veggies. Some people will soak them in apple cider vinegar and baking soda, and stuff like that. But which is another great option. But I prefer the ozone bubbler myself. And you're not going to be able to kill all of them. So again, don't live in fear. You're going to still get some exposure. You just are. So build up your stomach acid levels and don't freak out about, sometimes you're going to ingest them and there's nothing you can do about it.
Right. Are parasites always dead when they come out in the stool?
No.
Wow.
Not always. Most of the time they are. So here's the thing about parasites. They are so stealthy. And this is why stool testing is a sad joke. Don't waste your time on trying to get your doctor to prove that you have parasites with stool testing, because parasites secrete an enzyme that self-destructs their body and their DNA within 15 minutes of leaving the host. So by the time that stool sample gets tested, they've already deleted their own DNA and their body. So most of the time they're coming out dead, but not always. Sometimes there have been cases, especially with pinworms, younger pinworms do tend to often come out and be passed still wriggling and alive. I know. Nasty.
That's hilarious. What foods naturally kill parasites that we consume daily?
Ooh. So pumpkin seeds are a great one. They don't kill parasites, but they paralyze them and make it so that they cannot latch onto the intestinal wall of and hide again. So pumpkin seeds are a great one. Garlic is another really good one. Bitter melon is great. Raw honey, even though it has sugar in it, raw honey is a great anti-parasitic. Coconut oil, coconut meat, dates and figs are another great one. Ginger, fennel, papaya seeds especially. Go easy on the papaya seeds. And I see the same thing. So if a client has never done a parasite cleanse, I usually, as we're working on drainage and detoxing their life, we start with some of these foods. But again, low and slow. Don't go eating 10 papaya seeds and perksing like crazy. Start with one. Gentle. Onions, leeks, cabbage, pomegranate. There are tons of raw carrots, are another great anti-parasitic food. They don't like fermented foods either. Turmeric, anything spicy foods. They really don't like spicy foods either.
That's a great list. Yeah, the honey one's funny because I'll interview guests here and there. It's interesting to see honey lumped in with like white sugar in the same category.
Yeah.
I took a break from honey.
It's a great natural antibiotic too. So
yeah, I'm glad I added it back in. I feel better eating honey regularly.
Yeah.
So, this is more of a gardening question. How do I get parasitic flies to stop laying eggs in my monarch caterpillars? It's
oh gosh, I don't know, because are these caterpillars that you're like raising on your own? If they're wild caterpillars, you have no way to regulate that. I don't know. That's beyond my scope of practice.
I'm sure. I mean, we have an enclosed greenhouse here. I'm sure in the summer I'm going to see all sorts of, pests come up, and it'll be fun to like order the predators, ladybugs and everything to eat them.
I apologize. I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, it's like an interesting one. What parasites does tobacco kill, if any? I've looked up the studies. It seems like it's a lot of the smaller ones. Did you ever delve into that, or?
I haven't delved too deeply into tobacco, other than what I've seen out of your research. I mean, it makes sense that, that it would maybe go after smaller ones, because now, that being said, there are plenty of large parasites that can be in the respiratory tract. I mean, flukes can be in the lungs, roundworms can be in the lungs. So if you're breathing that in, I would imagine that it probably covers a pretty wide variety of parasites.
I cheek smoke. I don't know how much smoke's getting into the lungs, but I know the nicotine's definitely getting into the bloodstream. It's the main effect.
So blood parasites and so many parasites and pathogens in the mouth area too. So I would imagine it really can help target those as well. But if it's getting into the bloodstream, I mean, most of those microscopic parasites, they're going to be affecting the blood. So I'm sure that the tobacco really helps target that.
Yeah. Nicotine, it's a pretty powerful insecticide. I think they used it to deworm pigs in an old farmer's almanac. And it's the old remedies are really, really fascinating.
They really are. I geek out over all that nerdy stuff. I love it.
Because I remember when I was studying turpentine, like people brought up kerosene as like a folk remedy in the South. Did they use that for parasites, or was that something else?
I'm not sure about that.
That's a scary one.
I know. I wouldn't be using it.
That's the last resort.
Not while you're smoking the tobacco.
Right. Be a circus act. It's an interesting one. Can mineral balancing alone kill parasites?
Yes. So that is one of the foundational things that I always work on with my clients before we ever start going after parasites. Most of them are so deficient in minerals. And so I always focus on mineral balancing, because when you're deficient, I mean, copper obviously is a big one. Copper deficiency, especially when you're talking to like veterinarians or anybody in the farming industry, if an animal is copper deficient, they are overgrown with parasites. It's the same thing with humans. But when your minerals are not balanced, number one, it allows heavy metals to kind of not be able to chelate easily from the body. And so if you have high heavy metals, you're going to have major parasitic overgrowth. So I always do mineral balancing too as part of foundational, because it's going to naturally help eliminate heavy metals and naturally help get parasitic overgrowth in balance in a much gentler way than chelation therapy or going crazy with herbs and prescription anti-parasitics. So
it's kind of a good segue. Someone asked, are parasites the cause of diabetes and cancer and other illnesses? And I guess it's the thing to get across to people. It's all like interconnected is kind of what you're saying, right? Like it's
yeah. And it's really like I always tell people, it's never just one thing. So yeah, parasitic overgrowth is definitely linked to cancer. Yes, Hulda Clark proved in her book that pancreatic flukes can cause type 1 and type 2 diabetes. But what allowed them to get overgrown in the first place? So, but yeah, there's definitely connection for both.
Like I have an easy title for this show. That's the mantra. What allowed them to get overgrown in the first place?
Right.
Let's see. Someone asked, this is an interesting one, how to cross the blood-brain barrier to kill parasites.
Oh my gosh. So I get asked this a lot. Can you give me a list of things that cross the blood-brain barrier? Just about everything that kills parasites is going to cross the blood-brain barrier. Just about everything. So any herb that you're going to be taking is probably going to cross the blood-brain barrier. And everyone, I see this a lot in the parasite groups. People are it's like they're stuck on blood-brain barrier. But so yeah, there are binders that you can use. Cilantro, organic cilantro is fabulous at crossing the blood-brain barrier. Zeolite can be a good one as well. But yeah, there are so many different herbs that are going to cross the blood-brain barrier. So wormwood, black walnut, clove, neem. That's just to name a few.
Yeah, I noticed even with supplements, it's like the form of supplements, they market it like, oh, this form of magnesium crosses the blood-brain barrier or whatever.
It all does. Like, I know. I see that a lot too. A lot of people send me things like, hey, does this look good? It crosses the blood-brain barrier. And I'm like, it's just magnesium and it's $85 for a 1 month supply. You're being gypped. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to grow cilantro here. I miss cilantro. It's just hard to find. I mean, it goes bad when you buy it in the store so quickly. So
yeah, it does. I know. I'm excited about growing stuff too. All my own things.
Love it. Could floaters and eyes be parasites?
Yes, they can. That's just one cause, though. I mean, it can be vitamin A deficiency. It can be mold exposure. There are so many different things that can cause floaters, but yes, parasites can be a cause.
Awesome. Yeah, a lot of questions about albendazole. You mentioned that earlier that you experimented with that.
Yeah.
Albendazole?
Albendazole, Menben, Fenben. Yeah. So I'll just say as a blanket statement for, and there are again a ton of protocols out there right now, like the Sharkman protocol, like all these protocols where they're basically in the protocol, they're saying you're taking like 5 or 6 different anti-parasitics. And so people are buying the horse paste or dog parasite killer or horse or whatever. And I'm not telling you what to do with your body. Everyone's bio-individual. But I will tell you this. Those products can be very hard on the liver. I have had clients that before they worked with me, they jumped into those things. They ended up being hospitalized or having elevated liver enzymes. Or again, as my own personal story, I jumped into those and I lost all my hair. So thank God it grew back, but it was not a good time. So again, I believe in bio-individuality. Some people take these things and it's life-changing, game changer for them. But it's not every person. And I would never start with those without first making sure that your drainage pathways are open. You can poop, you can sweat, you've worked on detoxing other areas. And definitely, I see a lot of these protocols with these anti-parasitics and they're not using a binder. And so everything you're killing off is recirculating and then people end up with horrible herx reactions. So I do think there can be a time and a place for them. And as I always tell my clients, you are the one that knows your body better than anybody, better than a practitioner, better than a doctor. So you have to do what you feel is right for you.
And is the problem compounded if they're, like you said, with the elevated liver enzymes, if they're not even doing coffee enemas too? Do you find
exactly.
that a lot of people
exactly
have that?
And most of the time when that happens with, hey, I was hospitalized or my liver enzymes went up, it's because their drainage pathways weren't open. These are people that can't poop. They hardly can work up a sweat, even if they try. And it just was way too much too soon.
Makes sense. Yeah. We actually had a lot of questions about parasite cleanses for kids. How early to start and all that stuff.
So one thing that I do run into is people traumatizing their children and like forcing their kid to do an enema and like all these things, or using strong herbs, or even ivermectin and some of these other things in these parasite groups. And then their kids like, oh, my kids got worse, or, all these issues. I definitely work with infants. I definitely work with children, but I usually start with homeopathics, especially for a child that's like 10 years or younger. Never start with herbs first. Please don't give your child an enema. Do a castor oil pack for your kid. It's gentler. It's going to be very effective without traumatizing your child. And definitely don't start out with things like Fenben, ivermectin, Menben, all of those things. It's the same thing with an adult as it is with the kid. If your kid cannot poop, if your kid can't work up a sweat, if they're in a hot bath or running around, that's where we need to start. We have to start by figuring out what is allowing the parasites to thrive in the first place? Is your child dealing with trauma or something that was traumatic to them? Maybe it wasn't like abuse or whatever, but something traumatic to a child, like, hey, I started a new school, or you took my pacifier away, or whatever it is, can be traumatic for a child. So let's regulate their nervous system. Let's start with homeopathics because they're very gentle, but they're very effective and safe for infants and children.
That's great.
You can start with foods too, like anti-parasitic foods, like one very small thing at a time. Don't be like, hey, I'm going to start 10 different anti-parasitic foods on my kid. One thing at a time.
Because then that'll probably add up to being like the pharmaceutical ones, right?
Right. Right.
The effect.
Same effect.
This is a funny one. If you do a cleanse, but your significant other doesn't, will you just be reinfected with their bugs again?
Probably, but even if it's always a great idea for families to do it together or partners to do it together, because we do pass things back and forth. But even if your partner's not on board, the worst thing that you can do is be the crazy person nagging them. Just you do you, boo. Do what you need to do for your own health. Stay in your own lane. But yeah, it's great if they're on board. My husband, thank God, he's all about it. But if he wasn't, I would be staying in my own lane and doing what I need to do. It's still going to be beneficial for you to cleanse yourself in the long run.
Is it possible to cleanse while pregnant? And what about breastfeeding? Yes.
Not advised. So now that being said, you can do anti-parasitic foods very slowly and gently. You can work on homeopathics. Homeopathics are safe for pregnancy and breastfeeding, and I use them a lot for my pregnant and breastfeeding mamas because, again, they're gentle, but you do not want to be using hardcore herbs or doing hardcore things when you're pregnant and breastfeeding. This should be a time of really nurturing your body. Ideally, you want to cleanse for 6 to 12 months before you get pregnant. But if you're pregnant and breastfeeding and you're using some of these more intense methods like herbals, what you're detoxing will be passed through the breast milk. So it's not something I advise at all. But I do have a lot of moms coming to me like, no, I'm screwed. I just found out I'm pregnant. Now I can't parasite cleanse. And I'm like, okay, well, that attitude's got to go first. You're not screwed. But there are plenty of things we can do to gently help, deal with things that aren't going to be affecting you or your baby.
I think you mentioned diatomaceous earth on your website that you're a fan.
Yeah.
Someone asked about that and psyllium husk. Are those good for parasites?
So psyllium husk can help to act as a binder. It's not enough as a standalone. And I say the same thing with diatomaceous earth. It's a great addition. It's a great tool to have in your toolbox, but it's not enough to be like, hey, I have a severe parasitic infection and the diatomaceous earth is going to be enough. So food grade diatomaceous earth for an adult, and not medical advice, an adult can take up to 2 tablespoons a day. I usually tell people to start with like 1/8 of a teaspoon, see how you handle it. But again, it's a great tool, but not enough for like a severe parasitic infection.
Are people using borax too for parasites? Because I know years ago I was taking I think 1/8 of a teaspoon in water, and then I stopped doing it. And I feel it's safer to just take like boron bisglycinate in a capsule or something.
Yeah. And I'm really glad you brought that up because a lot of people are doing borax, and I can tell you that I have had 5 clients that when we did testing, borax came up as a major stress overload on their bioenergetic scan. And these are people that have been downing borax and soaking in borax baths. So I'm like, well, you're soaking in it and you're ingesting in it, and now you overdid it and it's stressing out your system. So there's got to be balance. There's got to be moderation. I would rather people shy away from that. It's different if you're going to do it for like maybe a few days or a week or something during a full moon cycle. But people are doing this kind of stuff all the time, every single day.
Yeah, I was talking to a doctor up here, and we're talking about the live blood microscopy, like the live blood analysis, and you're saying, yeah, it cleans up the blood so well. People are taking borax and then looking at their blood, and it just looks so much better. But is it safe long term? And yeah,
exactly. I would say no.
Right.
Based on the testing I've seen, where it clearly was resonating as a major stress to those 5 clients that it's popped up for.
Can parasites be linked to menstrual cycles instead of lunar cycles?
I haven't seen a lot of evidence to support that parasitic overgrowth is going to make you have a menstrual cycle with the full moon versus the new moon.
Okay.
Nothing really solid, if that's what they meant by that question.
Mm-hmm.
Now, issues with your menstrual cycle can definitely be related to parasitic overgrowth, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
Some women get their cycle with the full moon, and others get it with the new moon. So
got it. Okay. Yeah, sometimes these questions are broad, so it's hard to.
I know. I'm trying.
Are parasites a big culprit for dermatitis and rosacea?
So they're one culprit. Usually, when I see skin issues, there's usually a parasitic factor, a mold factor, and a heavy metal factor.
Makes sense.
But the parasites got overgrown because of high levels of mold and heavy metals.
Probably low stomach acid, right?
Yeah, probably low stomach acid. Yeah.
I know for me, and this is kind of basic info when you Google it, but I seem to have, because I was raised almost vegetarian, I just didn't like meat, like vitamin E deficiency. I had vitamin E deficiency, zinc deficiency. And when plugging those supplements in, really cleared up my skin. Even more than what I used to juice 4 days a week, green vegetable juice.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. And it does, nutritional deficiencies are, again, typically going to go back to, hey, I don't have enough stomach acid to absorb, or the parasites are sucking it out of me, or, there's a lot of stress and anxiety, or, you're not eating enough of those foods either. So, again, it's never just usually one thing. A lot of people like to blame parasites for everything, but it's not always just the be all end all, so to speak. There's such a much bigger puzzle to look at.
Yeah, it's definitely more work, right? I think that's why people are looking for the only one thing that was gonna.
Yes, it's just the one thing. If I just take this ivermectin, my life will be fixed. Yeah.
Maybe it could, a 1 in 1,000 chance, right? But probably not.
Right. Yeah. Again, a lot of people feel better if they take it. And obviously there's a huge factor to belief. We won't get into that, but.
Kind of touched on it, and I kind of wanted to delve into it more, best way to treat our pets. I think you wrote 2 posts, you have one on cats and you have one for dogs, and a list of you can give them. And I think they both have issues. I mean, I haven't seen my cats eating feces. I know that's a major issue with dogs, so I'd imagine there's different kind of things to look out for, whether it's a canine or feline, and although also whether the indoor or outdoor, right? I mean, there's a lot of factors.
Yeah. And really, I mean, when it comes to animals, mammals, they're always going to have some sort of pathogenic thing going on. And I will say that the posts that I did on how to parasite cleanse your cat and how to parasite cleanse your dog, they're not a comprehensive list. There are other things you can use. But really, if your animal is either, you can see visible parasites, whether, around their anus or they're throwing it up, obviously there's an issue. But if your animal is having any kind of behavioral or health issues, it's typically a sign that a parasite cleanse would be really good for them. And really, it's the same thing as humans. 2 to 4 times a year is maintenance. we should be parasite cleansing our pets. And sadly, a lot of our pets, the parasites are getting overgrown because of the crappy food we're giving our food that we're giving it's the same thing. It's an equivalent to like, you eating at McDonald's all the time. If you're giving your dog or your cat that nasty kibble, it's a breeding ground for pathogens to get overgrown. So yeah, there are a lot of things like with dogs can have, and again, I give dosing information in my Parasite 101 course, on my blog post, on my Instagram post. But oregano can be used on dogs, olive leaf, apple cider vinegar, black seed oil, garlic, contrary to popular belief, as long as you're not overdoing it and you're maintaining to, the right dosage. Garlic can be great for killing pathogens in your dog. Ginger, golden seal, pumpkin seeds, wormwood, diatomaceous earth. And there are also, binders that can be safe for your pets as well, and liver and kidney support if needed during a cleanse. You probably want to delve into the cats a little bit more, huh?
Yeah, lately we've been dealing with like the youngest lava with stones or blood in the urine, which I think is fairly common with male cats. With male cats. Yep. I had that with my male cats too before I knew what I know now. But yeah, definitely like some liver and kidney support for the cats would be great. Licorice root, dandelion could help with that too. But yeah, same thing with cats. There are tons of herbs that you can use to help cleanse your cat. And typically if they're dealing with your genital issues, there's some sort of pathogen that's overgrown. So doing, some regular cleansing 2 to 4 times a year could help keep that stuff at bay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. The vet actually recommended distilled water, because less minerals in distilled water. And he's living like a king, drinking deuterium depleted water, which is almost distilled.
I think I saw your post about that. His fancy water.
They're
great.
Yeah, they're living like royalty, copper dish and everything. Yeah,
that's how my animals are too. So spoiled. I love it.
How does she feel about zeolite?
So there are different zeolites on the market, and I think you just have to be mindful of, making sure that testing is being done so that there aren't contaminants. So I like to contact companies and find out, like, what does your testing process look like? Are you looking at each batch to make sure it's not contaminated? But zeolite is a great binder. It's, especially great for binding onto heavy metals. I think that there are a lot on the market that are overpriced, in my opinion. But there are some great ones out there. You have to be careful on how it's sourced and what other additives they put in there. There's a company I like, Results RNA. They've been in business over 20 years, and they have a good zeolite. But I know there are other ones out there too.
Yeah, I noticed you have like fulvic and humic on one of your lists. And same thing with shilajit, like with testing and all that. And a lot of poor quality things out there. Don't get it from Amazon. And there's always going to be some level of like zeolite. I think zeolite contains aluminum, right? Naturally. So it's like,
exactly.
Freak out, but there's a level.
This says it may contain heavy metals. I'm like, well, the natural mineral from the earth. So it's going to happen.
Right. Well, I think we got most of the questions. Blastocystis hominis. Any thoughts on that? Or blastocyst hominis? I don't know.
Let me pull that up really quickly. So
I think it's a blood parasite, isn't it? There's so many names.
Yeah. So It is going to be typically affecting digestion because it's going to normally stays in the intestines. It can be transmitted through food and water. And so it's normally going to give you issues like loose stools, diarrhea, a lot of stomach pain, anal itching, weight loss, fatigue. Sometimes it can go the opposite way. And at first you have diarrhea and then you have constipation. Some people have it and it's asymptomatic and not causing stress in the body. So again, we have to find out what's letting it thrive. But it's really going to mainly cause stress to digestion and nervous system.
Okay. And that's something you can get from the water supply. Right?
Yep, it is. Water supply and contaminated food. So it can be on, something that didn't get cleaned properly but water supply is a huge one for this parasite.
Yeah, I forgot to
filter your water.
Right. It was years ago, I camped in Yosemite National Forest with my friend's family, and that was when I was all about spring water and find spring kind of mentality, and I was drinking straight from, I think it was Fern Spring, I believe was the name, but it was a pretty quick moving little almost like a tiny pond, and it was going underground, and it was moving pretty good. But I remember as we were hiking up a trail, there was another one that was a pretty popular hiking trail, and I was filling up, and people walking by started freaking out, and they're like, "Don't drink the water, you're gonna die." And I had my little tincture of North American herb spice, wild oregano, and I'm like, I'll be fine. Like, I think I just put a drop in the water, shook it up really good.
Yeah.
But it's so funny. Like, people were freaking out. Even my friend's mom was worried. She's like, "You're going to get sick." Like,
we've done that too on our road trips. We did the Find a Spring app and we did it too. We were drinking the mountain water.
I feel like there's some strategies. I mean, they even have the water soluble oregano, which I used to give when I had goats, I used to give that, put microdoses in their drinking water because they would sometimes poop in there and I'd see it poop.
Right.
Prof. And I don't know. I think oregano is a pretty effective cleanser of.
Yeah, it is very. It's going to get parasites, viral things, bacterial things. It's a good one.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we got through a lot of them. Someone said, if untreated, what long-term damage can parasites cause to organs? It's pretty much anything, right? Yeah.
I mean, for a severe parasitic infection, if it's untreated and you're not really working on addressing what's allowing it to get overgrown, and also, kind of cleansing to the point where things are back in balance, then you can end up like I was. I was dying. I was literally dying. And so, it can definitely cause death. And I do have a lot of people that come to me and they're terrified. I think the parasites are killing me. I'm dying. And again, I always try to be sensitive, but remember that if you believe they're killing you, then that will happen. So your cells are listening. You can heal yourself. You can get things back in balance. And just remember that the parasites can be helpful in the right amounts.
Instead of the doctor giving them the death sentence, they're giving themselves the death sentence.
Right. I know. And I believed it. I always tell this story, when I was deep in the throes of lupus, I really believed I would not live to see my 40th birthday. I believed I was dying. And I had a friend tell me, "Angie, I really think that you could heal yourself and get well from this." And I was so pissed at her. I was so pissed because I was like, "How dare you? My doctor knows. And, I have this and there's nothing I can do about it." So, try not to own that, hey, you're going to die from whatever label, the doctor's given you or whatever label you've given yourself.
Yeah. And I think this is the most, triggering thing to people to talk about, but the attention that you get talking about your health problem. I mean, as someone that's been in this for 14 years, I've just observed without even entering into the conversation just at a distance, seeing, adults talk about their issues. And it's just like, it's more of a emotional, like they don't want to solve the problem from what I've seen a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Just want to talk about it.
Yeah. And we don't get to choose who's going to wake up and who isn't. And thank God I did. But I identified with that. It was my lupus, my autoimmune disease, I really did own it and identify with it. So that's a slippery slope for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I love your underlying, kind of mantra of what allowed the parasites to get overgrown in the first place. And what do you say, like that person that mentioned that they believe that parasites are killing them, work on the underlying stuff, and at the same time go through that stage like you were talking about of homeopathics, and then, doing like gentle little
and so when somebody comes to me and they say that, and I get it at least a couple times a week, messages from people that believe they are dying from the parasites. And I just lovingly tell them my story, that I believed I was dying too, but you can heal from this. And so, number one, you have to shift your mindset and tell yourself, I'm safe in this body. I trust my body's healing process. And then look deeper and what is allowing the parasites to thrive. And really, when it comes down to it, unfortunately, and this isn't the case for everyone, but a lot of people are not willing to address what is allowing the parasites to thrive. They're just not willing to do it. They're not going to go out and ground. They're not going to go out and get the fresh air. They're not going to calm their nervous system. They're not going to work through the trauma. They're not going to filter their water or reduce their exposure to things that allow parasites to thrive. But if you can do those things and you believe that you can heal, and you stop believing that parasites are out to get you and that they're going to kill you, then you can see a shift. You really can.
I love it. Or buying their first enema kit, or my first zip up sauna was, I think, $300-400 used on Craigslist. So
right? I know. You don't have to spend a lot. And there are so many things you can do when you're on a budget. So many things. So taking those steps, but shift in the mindset is a big one. Which is what I preach in my parasite group all the time. Like, stop living in fear that you're dying from a parasitic infection and there's no way you can reverse it.
Well, I love it. Well, yeah, you're going against the grain of TikTok,
I know.
Instagram, sensationalist reels, and
I despise TikTok, but my daughter, who's going to be 25 this week, she's like, Mom, I think you should get on TikTok because there's so much fear around parasites and people need to know that they need to stop living in fear. And I'm like, oh, I really don't want to get on TikTok.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the marketing that you were talking about, they're preying on that ignorant population on TikTok that is prone to being freaked out easily. And
yes,
so we need to get people swoop in and help out. So parasitemama.com, is that the best place for people to see all your stuff?
Yeah, parasitemama.com is going to give you all the information on my free parasite group, my online courses. I have a Parasite 101 masterclass, but I have also other free courses that I offer. My nervous system course is free, how to regulate your nervous system from home, and got some other free courses. But yeah, that's the best way to get a hold of me if you want to do a free consult or you're looking for all my nerdy blog posts on parasites.
Well, this was so much fun. Thanks, Angela, for coming on and talking about worms and all the other critters out there.
Oh, you're so welcome. I really appreciate you having me. It means a lot.
All right. Thanks. Stick around as we close out the show. Well, that was a really fun conversation on parasites. Like I told Angela, I see these educators on both sides of the spectrum, people saying that they're all good and they're all symbiotes, and we don't have to ever poison them or try to get them out. And then on the other hand, there's the hardcore cleansers, detox crew that's trying to constantly get all of them out of their body. I really like Angela's approach to emphasize having strong stomach acid. I know when I look back on a lot of my health symptoms, I was probably zinc deficient for 30 plus years of my life, and also protein deficient for that same period of time. And we need both of those, among other things, to make stomach acid. But often the missing pieces are protein intake and zinc intake. Since I've been supplementing zinc for the past year and a half, I've definitely noticed less bloating and indigestion, just better digestion overall. And so now is probably the best time for me to do a parasite cleanse, because I've started to really dial in that strong stomach acid and supporting optimal digestion. One of the most fascinating points that she brought up was how parasites adapt to certain herbs if we do the same protocol over and over. I've never seen that, never seen research on it. It's fascinating to me. I'd like to delve more into that. She also has me curious now about the bioenergetic testing. All of the ones that I've ever used, just put your finger on a little metal plate and it's supposed to read the metals that you have in the body, all the different chemical exposures that you've had. But to actually use physical samples like hair, saliva, fingernails, I think that's pretty cool. I thought her answer to the listener questions was interesting. The one, how long is an effective parasite cleanse? And she was saying that cleansing every full moon cycle, 5 days before through 5 days after, until your health issues go away, and then 2 to 3 cleanses a year as maintenance. Since I've been studying natural health, I've always heard you want to do the protocol for the entire egg-laying cycle of the parasites that you're targeting, which I think the average is 90 to 100 days, which for me was always really difficult to follow, to do something for 3 months straight. So for me, it's a big relief to hear that you only have to go for 10 days in a row and then take a break. So I'm looking forward to experimenting with that. I've had some pretty profound experiences with royal rife frequencies on their own. Right now, I like the Pearl M, the resonant light device. It's a pretty substantial investment, but I think it's the best one that I've ever used for sure. And I just keep it right next to the couch so that you're multitasking when you're watching a movie or whatever. You can get a treatment at the same time. But the next full moon, I'm looking forward to experimenting with that for 5 days before, combined with my favorite is the Shen Blossom Aka Hinoki and the Mountain Detox Formula tincture. I'm going to take those two with the Royal Rife frequencies and see what happens. And last thing I'll comment on, I do like that she emphasized bowel movements, and a lot of people jump into this without having 2 good bowel movements a day. So if you're only having one and you want to start parasite cleansing, then I think it's really smart to add some type of a laxative to the protocol, whether it's magnesium citrate or senna leaf tea or rhubarb or whatever works for you. I do think that's often a missing piece that people don't think about, because you could kill all of them, but if you're not passing them out into the toilet, then you're just going to get sick. So if you'd like to work with Angela, you can go to Parasite Mama, that's MAMMA, so 2 M's.com. She has a great blog. She offers one-on-one consultations. If you need guidance in your health journey. I think she's a wealth of information and a really great resource. My website is matt-blackburn.com. You can read about my CLF protocol, stands for calcification, lipofuscin, and fibrosis. And those are three things that accumulate over time in the body that cause a lot of different health conditions. So I designed a protocol using certain lifestyle practices and keeping an eye on certain lab markers to keep those three things in check. Then if you find the shop tab, I have all of my recommended products. I know sometimes for Christmas, it's hard to shop for friends and family. Makes it a lot easier if they're into health and you know what things they already have. But even if they're not into health, there's a lot of things you can get to help them relax. I have different chocolates on my site, a great bath bomb. If someone you know drinks alcohol regularly, I even have a pre-alcohol probiotic that they can drink. Actually, I just had my friend from California text me the other day and said it's a game changer, that he absolutely felt different the next morning after drinking with that probiotic. It's called Z-Biotic. Then if you know someone like me that's in a more northern climate, there's the Sky Portal from Chroma, which is an absolute game changer in the winter to have that on the office desk shining at you, especially around noontime. It really helps to make me more alert and also improve my sleep. And then on the topic of parasites, my favorite ozone generator is from Crucial 4, and it's a cold plasma device. I love how easy it is to use when you start working with a regulator and oxygen tanks. It can get a little overwhelming and intimidating, but Charles over at Crucial 4 makes it really easy. For years, I just used a ozone generator that basically takes ambient air and then runs it into a bubbler, which is great. You can get a really high quality one for between $400 and $500. I definitely would not pay less than that for a quality ozone machine that's just pulling from the ambient air. There's a lot of garbage out there on Amazon. I think it's well worth the investment for roughly $2,000 to invest in a really high quality unit that should last for years and years, and that's multi-purpose. So instead of just bubbling ozone gas into water, which you can drink or clean your fruits and vegetables with this machine, you could also make ozonated oils. You can put the ozone gas into your ears. You can do rectal insufflations with ozone gas. The purity is so much higher taking it from a oxygen tank, and I get it from a welding supply store, this pure O2, and running that into the machine versus just pulling it from the air, because you're going to get nitrogen impurities that way. I like eating salads when I'm out at a restaurant, especially a good Caesar salad, and who knows what's in there, parasite eggs or whatever. But I know at home, when the lettuce or salad is ozonated, I know that the risk is significantly reduced of getting parasites. And if you want to check out the Mitolife products, you can go to mitolife.co. We're actually running a holiday sale through Christmas Eve. So it's 20% off everything in the store. And going back to holiday gifts, I think the grounding sheets are a great gift. I've given a few out locally to people that have just dabbled in natural health, and they say it absolutely transformed their sleep, especially if they go rod to earth. It's actually pounding the grounding rod into the dirt and running that up through their window. They report a lot better sleep. So you can find that under the shop tab under living. Just make sure that you add the grounding rod kit to your order if you're going to try that one out. If you click on the wellness tab, that's where you could see all of the different supplements that we sell. We have different enzyme products, digestive, systemic, different fat-soluble vitamins without other ingredients. So we have vitamin K2 and K1 by itself. We have mixed tocopherol, vitamin E in a non-gelatin capsule. That was a request that we received frequently from people, and that'll be back really soon, hopefully before the end of the sale, and that's what it's looking like. We have pure Shilajit tablets. I take 5 every day with my coffee. Find it goes really well with coffee after breakfast. We have various like whole food, quote unquote, supplements. So that would be beef liver, freeze dried. We have oyster, elk velvet antler. And a lot of people love giving those to their dog, especially the beef liver and the elk velvet antler. I actually gave the elk velvet antler to a guy locally with a dog. His dog was dealing with joint aches and just had trouble walking. And he started opening up the elk velvet on his dog food, and his dog started walking better and is way more mobile. It's packed with amino acids and collagen, but it also has the hyaluronic acid and chondroitin sulfate and all the things you'd usually see in like a joint support supplement, but with all this other stuff, with minerals, with peptides and unique amino acids. If I had a dog, it would be on beef liver, Shilajit, and elk velvet every day. And if you wanted to go all out, you would put some jellyfish jolt on there, which is wild caught collagen from jellyfish. Since the last show, we've released 2 new products, and these are 2 that I've really been enjoying, especially this past year. I think I've been on lithium for about a year and a half, and all the lithium products that I was taking had a lot of different binders and excipients in there. I would much rather take bamboo extract or bamboo silica instead of just regular silica. And that's what I have in the Mitolife lithium. And if you just took 1 capsule a day, which is 10 milligrams a day of the Mitolife lithium, 1 bottle would actually last you 6 months. So without any discounts, that actually comes out to 25 cents a day. And with our holiday sale, that comes out to 20 cents a day. And I like breaking down the price sometimes because there's this messaging often out there of supplement graveyards and spending so much money on supplements. But if you're buying a high quality product for a good price and you're seeing a benefit, then is it a waste of money? So I experimented with lithium orotate about 7 or 8 years ago when I was living in an RV. It's another lifetime. And I definitely noticed a huge cognitive benefit. I was living a really fast-paced life, working several jobs, going to college, and it was just a lot of responsibilities. And when I took lithium consistently, I definitely noticed a light bulb turning on effect and also a stress reducing effect. So definitely read through the lithium page. If it doesn't come up, you have to click on product info on the lithium page on the Mitolife site. And I write that up myself. I don't generate it from Chat GPT or whatever. I actually spend several hours writing out those product descriptions myself. And so you could see the bullet points that I listed there straight from scientific studies, the benefits of lithium for reproductive support, mood support, cardiovascular support, bone health support, even fighting age-related decline in muscle mass or sarcopenia, even supporting the pancreas and glucose removal, neuroprotective effects, lowering inflammation, oxidative stress, protecting against lipid peroxidation, which connects with my CLF protocol, so many things. And then recently I interviewed the PhD Tyler Pansner, and he helped me connect on my show my B12 gene mutations as it relates to supplementing lithium. And he pointed to, I think, 6 or 7 gene mutations that I would benefit from supplementing lithium regularly. And it was related to vitamin B12 and my ability to absorb it, transport it, and utilize being genetically impaired. And lithium actually supports B12 transport and uptake and everything. So even if you don't have gene mutations related to B12 metabolism, all of the things I listed and everything I listed there with scientific studies to back it up on that product page, you would still likely see those benefits. And then the other product is melatonin. And this one is probably more controversial. I think I've been getting some messages about lithium because there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation about the safety of lithium. But I think a lot of that gets confusing when people don't say the form. So the form that's used, that's prescribed by doctors, that's the carbonate form where they need to take well over a gram, 1,400 milligrams, 2,000 milligrams, doses like that. Whereas orotic acid bound to lithium, called lithium orotate, which is what I sell under Mitolife, you don't take a gram, you microdose it, which is 5, 10 milligrams, 20 milligrams. That's the max I've seen in one capsule from different companies is 20 milligram dose, nowhere near a gram. So the effects are going to be way different. And you don't have to take as much because the absorption is a lot higher. And just the health benefits of orotic acid alone are really fascinating. It actually used to be called a vitamin. And so we released melatonin in 2 different dosages. One is 5 milligrams, which is really standard. That's not a scary amount. And then 50 milligrams, which we call super strength. And I've taken well over 50 milligrams, and I have been taking well over 50 milligrams every night before bed. And it's interesting in the biohacking space or just the natural health space, there's so much debate about melatonin. You have these big names saying you should never take it. We should only be making it endogenously. And there's going to be drawbacks to supplementing it. And then you have the other side that's using megadoses, even in suppository form, like several hundred milligrams for antiviral support and fighting infections or countering serious disease states, like one that starts with C, or actually a couple that starts with C. So once again, no Chat GPT, hand wrote that description there on the melatonin page. And I thought it was best just to start with the 3 myths that are commonly held about melatonin. Myth number 1, melatonin is mostly secreted by our pineal gland. That's false. Number 2, supplementing exogenous melatonin will lower our endogenous production. That is also false. It's the opposite. And then 3, melatonin is mostly a sleep hormone that regulates our circadian rhythm, and that's its main effect in the body. That's also false. A lot of people are scared of high dosing ascorbic acid, even temporarily, just acutely for some type of situation, infection, whatever, which is really interesting to me. But melatonin can be used the same way acutely in high doses. And a lot of people go up in the gram range, which gets difficult to do with capsules because now you're taking the entire bottle in one dose. But for serious disease conditions, I've seen people taking 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,000 milligrams of melatonin a day. I've been doing a lot of experiments with it for the past year, even taking it in the morning, in the afternoon, which you think would make you sleepy, but I didn't get sleepy. What I have noticed is that it does seem to stir things up, where when I first started taking large doses pulsed, I noticed that I felt like I was coming down with something the next morning, but then it went away. So that was a really interesting little anecdotal thing that happened to me with high dosing melatonin. So it's a huge rabbit hole, and there's so much said about melatonin. One of the interesting things to me with the oral melatonin is the absorption. Some people claim it's only 1%, where I've seen the research, it's actually 15%, which means if you take 5 milligrams, then how much of that is actually being absorbed? That's only 3/4 of 1 gram that you're actually absorbing. So I think that's where a lot of the fear originates, is people think that you're absorbing everything that you take, which is just not true with any supplement. And the two most fascinating things that I learned about melatonin in the past year is that, one, it decreases as we age, and number two, melatonin is suppressed, not only produced in our pineal gland, but suppressed where it's produced mostly 95% in the mitochondria in every cell throughout our body by EMFs. So I think when people are traveling, they take microdoses at a hotel or whatever to support switching time zones for jet lag. But I think that's a really minor effect. I wouldn't take it for that when traveling. I would take it at the hotel for protecting my mitochondria from the onslaught of 30 Wi-Fi signals hitting me all night long while I'm sleeping, or even an Airbnb in a popular city or whatever. That's when I would take melatonin, is actually to support my mitochondria, not for jet lag or for improving sleep. It's just supporting mitochondrial function. That is melatonin's major effect. It maintains the efficacy of the respiratory chain complexes. It detoxifies ROS, reactive oxygen species, detoxifies RNS, reactive nitrogen species. It limits mitochondrial apoptosis. It does so many things way beyond sleep. And I would say if someone doesn't react well to ascorbic acid, whether it's genetic oxalate production, or they just don't respond well to it for whatever reason, I would say that person should definitely be taking another antioxidant called melatonin. So if you want to dive deeper into my work, last month's live on YouTube for the Mitolife Academy, it's $15 a month. I shared the 2 books that I'm currently checking out. One is on lithium and the other one is on high dose melatonin. And I get a lot of questions on social media. 99% of them I don't have time to answer. So for $15 a month, gaining access to the previous 3 years of videos, used to do 4 videos a month. Now I'm doing 2 videos a month and then a live Q&A the last day of every month. They've been averaging around a half hour, and I just share different tips and tricks and protocols and things that I'm researching in real time on that YouTube membership. This might be the last podcast of the year, so if you don't hear from me, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And if you do hear from me, well, look forward to another awesome Mitolife Radio show, and I'll see you guys next time. Stay supercharged.